right. There it is. Okay. It should be good right there, I think. Just adjust this here a little bit more so it's just a bit more in front of me. And I got to open up that door because it is hot, hot, hot in here. And I just turned down the heater and still it's a freaking steam bath in here. Please, God, no porch pirates tonight. No porch pirates tonight. No porch invaders tonight, please. Okay. I'm just about ready to go here, folks. Sorry about that. Like always, I tend to brain fart these things. I'll get started here in a little bit. What's up, the bruh? What's up, bruh? Where is that thing? Okay. Forgive the ottoman if you see it on camera. It's a little messed up because I took down my knockdown table to give myself just a little bit of room here for Christmas. I really didn't want to feel boxed in. But how you all doing on this Sunday night? Hopefully you're staying warm. It's supposed to be cold all across the board tonight. Let me grab my ginger ale here. Welcome, 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 everybody. If you are new to the channel, do me a solid, subscribe. It really helps the channel to grow. And smash that like button. That also helps the channel to grow. Also, check out my eBay store, the Carolina Collector 001. The link is in the chat as we speak, and it's in the description box of this live stream. Thank you very much. I'm going to wait for another minute or two before I get started. Forgive me, I have a little bit of a headache. Haven't really been feeling all that great today. I didn't have such a good night last night, and I'll explain why. But this is going to be a little bit of a different review. I figured let me do this as a live stream because there's a lot to talk about, because this has a lot of sentimental value attached to it. So let me just turn on the lights on my desk here. I'll give myself another few minutes and then we'll begin. Cheers. But we are going to talk about this. Man, oh man, oh man, what a night I had last night. It was a very brutal night for me last night. A lot of emotions came out of me last night. So we'll get into this here in a little bit. Like I said, we'll be talking about this album right here. There's a link to another YouTube channel that actually ripped this album. I don't want to play any of the music off of it because obviously I don't want to get a copyright strike or anything like that, but you can actually hear it. Not only that, the link to my eBay store is also in the chat if you want to help to support the channel financially. I really appreciate it. By the way, if you're eBay customers of mine, all your orders, at least the current ones that I've had over the weekend, have gone out the door. They're in the post office right now, so expect your orders any day. I think we'll just hop right into this. So first off, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, all that good stuff to everybody. I hope you're all having a wonderful and fantastic Sunday. I forgot that it was even Sunday, because I pretty much stood home all day yesterday and sat out on my patio. It was a pretty emotional night last night. As all of you know, if you've been watching the channel, my father unfortunately passed away, this June. And it's been a little difficult for all of us in my family. We're all handling it in our own way. For me, I'm so far away from New York and Pennsylvania and Long Island that, I'm kind of left to mourning for him in my own way. And sometimes, as you know, with the holidays, people can get really emotional because it's a time to reflect and think about the things that you have and the things that you don't have and people that you lost. And you start thinking about your past and what the future holds and all that kind of stuff, right? And last night, despite myself, I started listing some more sports cards and things over at my eBay store to see if I can end this eBay year on a bang. There's a lot of stuff over at my eBay store, by the way. Click the link. It's in the chat, and it's in the description box of this live stream, by the way. But while I was sitting here listing some stuff, I was playing originally some 70s music, and then I started playing some 80s music in the background off of my Amazon Dot. And then I started playing some Christmas music. And that's where things got a little emotional for me. I grabbed myself a glass of wine to kind of wind down and relax. And just certain music, started getting me a little emotional. And I started really, really thinking about my father. That's one of his mass cards right there, as a matter of fact. Because this is the first year, he's not around for Thanksgiving, wasn't around for Halloween, wasn't around for Thanksgiving, and obviously we're not going to have him for Christmas and New Year. But I turned off all the lights but one. I had the lights shining through from my patio into my living room, plus I got the LED lights on my desk. So it kind of gave it like a little bit of a holiday vibe. And it really made me think of him. So I got tired of listening to my Amazon Dot. And then I went onto my computer. And I know I have a whole ton of Christmas music that I downloaded, a mix of modern and classic and all that kind of stuff without all the commercials. I'd rather play it through my computer because it's just, a lot better. I'm probably going to end up downloading it to my phone because it's annoying, listening to music on the Amazon Dot. And unless you have an ad blocker or something on YouTube, you're gonna get hammered with ads. It's ridiculous. I also have an iHeartRadio account that also gets bombarded with ads. So I went looking through all my music, and I thought I had this particular album ripped and downloaded on my computer. I didn't. So I started looking around on YouTube. The link to the rip of this album, which is not on my channel. I really don't want to get a copyright strike. But the link to another YouTuber to this exact album is now in the chat, so you can click on that. It'll take you right to a complete rip from beginning to end of the 10 songs that are on this particular album. And right off the bat, within the first 5 minutes of playing the first song on this, which is Jingle Bells, And this is a very classic album. This came out in, I believe, 1981. Yes, it did, 1981. And there have been other Disney albums since, but I think this one is the best because you get a lot more of the Disney characters in here. It's not, what's his name there? Larry Groce or Larry Groce or Groch, however you say his name. Forgive me if I'm butchering the last name here, but um, this was an album that my parents bought for my brother and my sister, for myself and my brother, I should say. This is before my sister was born. And when I played this last night, as far as the audio rip that's on YouTube, I bawled out for like an hour, hour and a half thinking about my father because listening to this album brought back a lot of memories, man. Like just untold memories from when I was a kid. You know, my brother and myself, we used to roughhouse a lot. Um, there were a lot of good Christmases, but there were also a lot of bad ones. Unfortunately, my dad lost his job for many years. You know, he had to get food stamps. You know, he was selling all of his, you know, he had collected a very extensive collection of coins and vintage dollars and things like that. He was literally cleaning bars and restaurants and toilets and doing odd jobs here and there, working off the books because he had no choice. There was no other way to go about it. You know, I watched that man fall apart because, you know, he was a construction worker. And to have his livelihood stripped from him was devastating to him in more ways than one, in more ways than I even knew, until I started going through things in my adult life that I never wanted nor expected. Of course, this world and the people in it can be quite evil and disgusting. Whether it's jealousy, envy, sloth, wrath, any of that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, this world just, it will chew you up and spit you out. Bear with me here for a second. I just want to shut this off here on my desktop. Sorry about that. But anyway. Yeah, so it broke my dad in more ways than one. It really did. It broke him. It really broke him. I don't think he meant to take it out on us. It's just he didn't know how to handle it because that's all he knew was construction. And it was quite awful going through a lot of things that we went through because of, you know, losing his career and his job. There are certain things I'm not going to talk about because that's like internal family stuff. And I don't think it would be really nice to really get into the meat and potatoes of things. But suffice it to say that, you know, my father, and by extension, my mother as well, because of things that did happen that people did to my family, especially to my brother and myself when we were kids. Not going to get into it. Nothing inappropriate or anything. It's just unfortunately you have piece of shit jealous people that are out there that knew that my dad was making mountains of money back then. You know, my brother and myself at that time, you know, we're walking around with 20, 30, $40 worth of quarters in our pocket for the arcade machines in the neighborhood. And all the parents would sit outside. And when Mr. Softy came, everybody would buy ice cream for everybody else's kid and all that kind of stuff. Then, of course, you know, in New York City, this is way before 9/11. You wouldn't be accused of being a terrorist for lighting fireworks like now. You know, back then you can light fireworks pretty freely in New York City. Now it's a commie socialist, who pronoun regime. Thank God I got out of there when I did because the New York that I grew up with is gone. It's dead. It's never coming back. Which is why I appreciate where I live now here in North Carolina because it's a huge step back. It's a huge step back in the right direction. And I really don't want to get into politics with this live stream, but yeah, so all of these thoughts are racing through my head. When my grandmother was alive, there were times where there'd be Christmas gifts just piled to the ceiling. And there were times where after he lost his job for all those years, he literally had to go down to Long Island City, like I said, and get food stamps, and went to Corpus Christi Parish to get food for us. I mean, it was just fucking awful, man. It was awful. It was really awful. But, my parents did the best they could with what they had. Like I said, unfortunately, during the Christmas season, Christmas holiday, it was very tough sometimes. Again, I mean, we had gifts piled up to the ceiling. You couldn't even see the window, in the apartment because things were so piled up high. But there were very bad Christmases where after my dad lost everything because of all the nonsense that was going on with the union at that time, and there were no jobs, there was nothing. There was nothing my dad can do. I mean, that man really, really, really sacrificed for us. Cleaning bars, doing not off the books construction work and all that stuff. And he had to chase down money all the time. I mean, it was fucking awful. So anyway, let me just acknowledge the chat here quick. M Parma, how you doing, my friend? So I'm basically doing like a non-conventional review of this album, but there's a bit of a backstory to this thing. Because, well, you'll get to watch it later, but, it's just the experiences of listening to this thing through good and bad times when our family was really suffering. But anyway, yeah, so we had Christmases where, like, you couldn't even walk. You couldn't even walk on the carpet in my parents' apartment because there were so many toys. And then when my dad lost his job for all those years, the one thing that was consistent, even through bad times, was this album. Now, it's not the exact album. In other words, it's not the album. I bought this on eBay many, many, many years later because I wanted this as, as a keepsake. And, I was able to get my hands on one of these on eBay. And I wanted to go over this with you. Again, I'm not going to play the audio because, unfortunately, I don't want to get a copyright strike. But the link to another YouTube channel is in the chat right now. So you can actually hear this album back and forth. And this is a very unique album because you hear all the Disney characters in each one of these songs. And last night, I got so emotional thinking about my father since he died this year that all these childhood memories started racing through my mind, which is why I'm doing this in live stream form because there's just a lot to talk about with this. So I found this on eBay, and then I found that one YouTube channel that does have the album where you can listen to it. You can click on the link in the chat. And let me tell you, to this day, I've never heard a Christmas album like this. It really made me bawl out last night. That's why I have a headache today. So, well, let's go over the front cover. Obviously, there you have the front cover. You got, the majority of the Disney characters: Donald Duck, Pluto, Goofy, Mickey and Minnie, and the Chipmunks. Those are pretty much your base characters. And then you go into the back. It tells you, basically what the album contains therein. You got a list of the songs right here on the bottom of the sleeve. Unfortunately, again, I don't have a record player, but, I do have that rip that I found on YouTube that I've now downloaded to my phone and to my computer so that if I ever want to listen to it, this thing is still dusty, but I'm trying not to touch this thing. But as you can see right there, there is side one, and there is side two. Now, again, this is not the exact one or the actual one. This is a of the one that we used to have when we were kids. And it comes in this paper sleeve right here. Let me just put this back inside the sleeve because I really don't want to damage this thing. So that's the paper sleeve it comes in. Very simple. It's amazing. You know, if you're a guy my age, I'm like the last of a generation that really appreciates what it's like to listen to stuff on vinyl. I know vinyl now is like a very niche hobby, but it's still pretty cool, man. So this is the pamphlet contained therein. And what's cool is that, you know, if you've got kids and stuff like that, it's got all the lyrics to every song that's in there with illustrations to go along with every song, which is cool. And it's meant for you to sing with your kids and with the family. It is a sing-along album. So, and it's a shame because I remember that we listened to this album between my brother and myself. I don't remember. I think my sister was too little after she was born to remember what it was like to listen to this album almost every Christmas. But the original that my parents bought for years and years and years, man, we listened to that thing. And obviously over time, you know, the original that my family had, the front cover ripped. I think this manual ripped or got destroyed. That's how much we listened to it during Christmas. But again, like I said, it's got all these illustrations in there, and you know, when you actually listen to this album, there's like a certain charm to it that doesn't exist in a lot of Christmas music today. Like this particular album was geared for kids and for families. And when I heard this album back and forth last night for the first time in many years, let me tell you, I cried. I cried a lot, remembering my dad. Cried quite a bit thinking about him. Because what that man did to make sure that we had a Christmas when things got bad. I remember having to go with him, and he would take me along with him to Corpus Christi Parish and get food for us. And this is a man that would come home with wads and wads of money working in union plumbing. But once the work was gone, that was it. And when I heard this, it was like the emotions just like washed through me. What this man did for us. And all of those memories just went through me like a lightning bolt. I remember opening up when I was a kid. My brother might be too young to remember this. Those WWF wrestlers, the LJN wrestlers, those big chunks of rubber. I remember opening up those as a kid with my brother. My brother was a big Thundercats and Bionic 6 fan. He also, my brother and myself, we both got like He-Man figures. He got Snake Mountain. I got Castle Grayskull. He got a mix of bad and good guys. I got a mix of bad and good guys. We got G.I. Joe jets back in the days. I remember getting the SR-71 Blackbird. And I think we got the helicopter. And I remember watching my parents, you know, I was kind of like doing one of these peeking Christmas Eve when my parents would drag out all of that stuff. I mean, there was a lot of shit. I remember getting the Vectrex as a kid. It was a lot. It was a lot of memories. A lot of memories that washed through, like when my grandmother was alive. The building that I grew up in, everybody knew everybody. I mean, everyone knew everyone, and it was very rare that anyone would actually lock the door or anything like that in the building where I grew up. And all the kids would run up and down the steps, and we'd be in each other's apartments. Everybody was on a first name basis. I mean, you know, you had Susie and Mike up on the 5th floor. You had Brian and Brenda up on the 6th floor, and Brian was an amateur boxer. We called her Grandma Helen Harwith and Frankie. Lucy and Mike Migliori, Senior and Junior. I heard that Mike Migliori Senior passed away within the past couple of years. I don't know the exact time frame, but Sherry Caban, unfortunately, who passed away. The Cruz family, which I heard their father passed away. You had Christy. I think that was her name. Oh, no, it was Jenny. Jenny that lived up on the 5th or 6th floor. I forget. You had Gulu and Sulu, we used to call them. They lived in the building. You had Kiana Worley and her mom, Diane, and her father, Basil. You had the old Jewish couple, Molly and Eli, which I think both of them passed away. You had this dude, Matt Pietro, that lived on 69th Street. I don't know whatever happened to him, because we used to be good friends. My daughter's godfather, Michael Danielik, and my other friend, Raph, whose father, I believe, passed away recently. I remember all these names. You had Kevin Wook, you had Danny Gross, you had Mark Swyback. We all knew everybody in that building complex where we grew up. And just listening to these 10 Christmas songs on here brought all of that back, because it reminded me of like when I was a kid playing touch football. We used to play stickball in between the buildings. Again, you wouldn't be accused of being an Al-Qaeda terrorist in New York because you could light fireworks back then. And my dad used to get a lot of them. Lots of them. And so did Matt Pietro's dad, Sal, who had the pink Elvis car. But he died as well, from what I heard. You had Tomer Alton and Tanner, his older brother, who died. Tomer was at my dad's funeral during his wake and all that stuff, which is cool. But then, like I said, I started listening to this, and all these memories started pouring through me, about things at home and stupid shit my dad would do. I mean, I even thought about the bad times as well. And I can't fault the man, because, going through a lot of stuff that I went through in the past 10 years, I would never wish on anybody. I would never wish it on anybody. Being homeless like I was, being falsely accused of cheating on the mother of my kids, losing my career because I did I have to say this just for context. It's funny how the good guy always seems to lose or get arrested or thrown in jail for nothing. As you know, like what happened with the girl I was dating from last year throughout early this year, that she accused me of all sorts of shit and called the police on me on 4 separate occasions and had me put in jail for 4 nights, and I was subsequently acquitted of any charges she was trying to bring. And it's not the first time it's happened in my life. Fighting for all that 9/11 stuff, or all that World Trade Center stuff, and then being falsely accused of being a fraud and a racist and a bigot, and blah, 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 all that bullshit. Being homeless like I was fucking awful, especially during this time. Let me tell you, it was by far the most horrific time It was the most horrific time I ever had or ever experienced. I would never wish that on anybody. And I towards the end, before my dad died, like, him and I had some real deep conversations about things between him and I that I wanted to close the door on. I kind of knew something was wrong anyway with him as time was going on, and we buried the hatchet, but the more we were talking on the phone, the more I can tell something was up. My family back in New York were really protecting me. At least that's the way I have to interpret it, from finding out what was going on with my dad, as sick as he was. There was a time they got him out of the hospital and sent him back home, but on a drop of a dime, they sent him home too early. And there were complications with him because he had bladder cancer on top of dementia. And a lot of other issues, too, that I wasn't even aware of. And he ended up going back to the hospital, and then the hospital turned into hospice. And I got very lucky. At least I got to see my dad on camera through WhatsApp because of my little sister. And then in June, that was pretty much the end. I mean, there's still a lot of guilt there because there were a lot. I mean, I'm very happy that in some ways my dad and myself buried the hatchet. I mean, there were times I'd be hanging out with the guys around here, and he called me out of the clear blue just to talk because he felt lonely, you know, and I felt bad for him, so I would take time away from my friends to talk to him on the phone just so he didn't feel alone and by himself. You know, and he would tell me, son, because there used to be, because we were so tight knit back in New York, you had Bernie O'Donnell that used to come over to the apartment. We had it. There was a guy called Bubba Bill. We used to call him Bubba Bill. How you doing? Big stuttering prick. Tanner Alton used to come up there. Mike Migliori would come up there. My mom fucking hated it, all of them, because it would encourage this. You know what I mean? And my mom hated it for good reason. And she didn't want us being around that. But my dad, and some of the men in the neighborhood, he really only had a handful of friends in New York. His entire life was back in Pennsylvania where he grew up. Pretty much all those guys either disappeared or passed away, and he was left alone in a lot of ways to fend for himself. When I listen to this, I wish I could play it here on camera, but I'm sure I'll get a YouTube copyright strike. I really don't want that. But if you click that link that's in the chat and you listen to this, I mean, it is from 1981, but all the songs on this album are pretty much timeless. They really remind me of when I was a kid. It's just, still a little hard to accept that, he's not here no more. It's a little hard to accept that my dad's not here. But so is life, I suppose. Yeah, last night after I went through all of the songs on this album via that YouTube video that I found that directly ripped this from the album, I remember my parents' apartment quite well. My parents' apartment went through several iterations. It had a very 70s look, and then it had a very 80s look, wooden chairs, old school ceiling lights, wooden table, old school 70s and 80s style couches with mirrors on the edges and on the armrests and all that kind of stuff. Big square TV in the living room. Big speakers from my dad's stereo system. Oh my God, how 70s and 80s. Now everything's been shrank down to things as big as my cell phone here that I'm using. I thought about all of this when I listened to this. All of those memories came washing through me last night. I called my mother and I talked to her for maybe a little bit. She was supposed to call me today, but I guess she got sidetracked. But I sent a group text. My family has a group text, and I created like a little thing for Christmas for my dad and sent it to everybody. And I sent my sister and everybody the link to this album that's on YouTube. Again, it's not my link, it's another YouTuber's link. I don't want to get a copyright strike again. Well, I mean, I don't have any strikes on the channel or community guidelines violations or anything like that, but I just don't want to risk it. But let me tell you, sometimes all it takes is a visual, a picture, a sound, a piece of clothing, jewelry, anything that could be physical and tangible. Let me just adjust my camera here quickly because just waiting for this stupid thing to catch up. How far behind is this live stream? Let me see here. Did it pause? What the hell's going on? Of course it did. Come on, YouTube, stop. But anyway, I thought about all that stuff. Like when my grandma was alive, my dad had two vehicles at one time. He had a I think it was a 1971 Chevy Chevelle, and I think he gave that up to my cousins in Pennsylvania. And then he had, I think it was a 73 Chevy Nova that he kept. And that was his baby. But even with both cars, you know, he used to take me with him in the back of the car. My brother would never go. I would. I used to love going with my dad in this car, you know, fall asleep in the back of my dad's Chevy, going to see my grandma, go pick her up and bring her over. But then my mom and dad were notorious for fucking arguing and screaming at each other. And my poor grandma, like you can tell, like she was uncomfortable a lot. It's just my parents had that way of like going at it. It was like Muhammad Ali going up against Mike Tyson with the two of them. It was just fucking unbelievable the way they would fight and argue with each other. My poor grandma would be sitting there like, yikes. But anyway, you know, I think about stuff like that. I think about my dad taking me to work with him sometimes, teaching me plumbing. All the guys on his job would hand me a dollar here, $1 there, $5 there. Take all that money, get a pocket full of quarters. My brother and myself. Well, my brother had his own group of friends and I had mine. But once quarters got involved, it was off to the arcades, off to, what was that, Medica Pharmacy, where Jason Hendricks worked with Mr. Lee. Or we go to the Greek Deli, which is still, you know, owned by Papu, or Papu's Deli, they call them, if that name even still sticks in my old neighborhood. But it used to be a Greek Deli. We go in there and buy candy and drinks and everything, and Mr. Softy and what have you. Yeah, all these memories came pouring, just rushing through me, listening to this. I didn't think a simple children's album would have such an impact on my mind. It really took me by surprise. I mean, I started bawling out on my patio when I called my mom, and when I came in here, I shut the door, I poured myself a fresh glass of wine, and just for an hour straight cried over him. I guess the moral of the story is that just don't take anything for granted, folks. All this stuff with politics and all this other bullshit is just a waste of time. Don't waste it, man. Don't waste it. I got that black and white photo like what's in the thumbnail of my dad sitting right there in front of me. One album just opened up the floodgate of memories in my brain. Going to my Aunt Donna's house in upstate New York, going to my Uncle Joey's, one of my Uncle Joseph's original houses in Staten Island where he had a pool. My cousin Joey, who's severely disabled, punched me dead square in my nose and gave me a nosebleed. Oy, 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 oy. My brother and myself used to roughhouse quite a bit when we were kids. There's a story behind that. It's a very unfortunate one that I think was a catalyst for my parents being very angry at people for many, many years. I'm not going to discuss that. That's more an internal thing. I mean, my parents never did anything inappropriate with us, don't get me wrong. But somebody did something really fucked up to us when we were kids. I'll leave it at that. But then I think of all the good Christmases. My God, man, the amount of gifts and presents that would line up the living room. I think my mom had her father's tree, my grandpa George's tree, who died when I was a kid. I think he died in like 86 or 87 or something like that. And both sides of that Christmas tree were just piles and piles and piles of toys. It was so much. My dad used to have a weightlifting set in the living room that was mounted to the space in the living room. But he decided to sell it off. I think he gave it to my friend Albert and his brother Dwight, and built this big wood box with wheels on it because there was so much shit that we got over the years for Christmas that we didn't. My dad didn't know what to do with anything, so he built this big wood box and stuck it in the living room. It was essentially a toy chest. A pretty screwed up toy chest because he got a lot of that plywood from work, but it was a toy chest nevertheless. I don't even know if they still have that in my parents' apartment or not. It's probably filled with junk if it is. I'm sure my mom probably got rid of it after my dad died, but I remember my dad scaring the living shit out of me in particular, because there used to be like what did they call that back in the days? Chiller Theater, I think it was called. Burger King would have specials where you would get these 3D glasses that would fuck with your eyes. It wasn't traditional 3D glasses, but one side was black, one side was clear. So it would throw off your color spectrum a little bit to make the objects on TV appear as if they were 3D. And there was a horror film called The Mask. Not Jim Carrey's The Mask, but this was like an old school horror film in black and white. My dad used to fuck with us with that. He would put on scary shit like an American Werewolf in London and fuck with us. Oh my God, I used to tell my dad I would see ghosts and phantoms at the window trying to come after me. I actually ran out of my bed one night because my brother was staying over at his friend Tomer's house, and ran underneath my parents' bed and puked all over the place because I was so fucking scared. You know? Like, I think of all this crazy shit. You know? I'm still washed over with memories. I remember my dad taking me to Little League. My dad put my brother in football. I like baseball. My brother liked football. He used to get a little hibachi. Little hibachi about this big, and actually cook food out on a fire escape. How New York is that? You know what I mean? He'd get a little bit of charcoal or something like that, and he would actually grill chicken out on the fire escape. I wonder if any of those old home movies still exist. With Cookie, Carrie, and Jazzy. And Judy Wilson, who passed away also. A lot of memories, all because of this. I'm very happy I got my hands on this, but you realize that life is so finite and life is so short that you don't take anything for granted. And really nothing in this world is trivial. Nothing in this world is trivial. And this album reminded me of all the good things that my dad worked hard for us. And a lot of times I treated him like shit. My mom treated him like shit. You know, obviously I was falling into my own. As you grow older, you know, as you grow up, you find yourself. You know, and I was always at odds with him and her. But that childhood innocence of one simple album, like, just made me, it was like a flashback of my entire childhood. You know, except for going out to mail out my eBay orders at the 24-hour kiosk at the post office, I've been pretty much home feeling very melancholy. You know, because the inevitable is next week. I think, Wednesday or Thursday, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day is. And then after that, New Year's. And in a lot of ways, I'm not sure if I accepted his death yet. But there was always this album during Christmas time. There was a couple of them that my parents had, but this was the one that they primarily played for us the most. So, if you got kids or family or anything like that, or you're nostalgic like I am, the link to the rip of this album is in the chat. Click on it. It'll take you right to the whole thing. I mean, it sounds kind of, if you're a grown adult, it's going to sound goofy and ridiculous. But for me, when I heard some songs on here, like it just made me really cry and miss my dad. Made me miss him more than I knew. And he's been gone since June, July, August, September, October, November, December. That's 6 months. And I still don't know if I've accepted it yet. So that's really it. There's not much more to say. There's really not much more to say. It's amazing how, even with my dad's baseball cards, I can imagine seeing my dad as a kid with all of his buddies sitting around with all of those old school baseball cards, the Bowmans, the Topps cards. And I remember one year I bought my dad a Howdy Doody marionette, a vintage one. I wonder whatever happened to that thing that I bought for him years ago. I should really ask my mom. But he cried like a little kid because that was one of his favorite toys. And when he opened that up for Christmas that one year, he cried like a baby because I think his dad got him one, my grandfather, my namesake. Because he really never knew his dad. I'm glad I did. So that's pretty much it, everybody. There's not much more to say except that, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Enjoy your family, your loved ones, your friends, everybody, because once they're gone, folks. There's nothing wrong with getting in touch with your inner child, especially during times like this, where I'm still grieving for my dad. But, think about what you have right now, because you never know when it's going to be gone. You really never know when it's going to be gone. And I miss him terribly. Appreciate everything you have, every crumb, even if you have an old pair of shoes or an old shirt, an old hat, a beat up car. There's some people out there that don't have anything. Traditionally, we only have one mom and one dad. We have one set of grandparents. All my grandparents have passed at this point. My aunts and uncles are now disappearing from this world. My father's gone. It's a fact of life. And I never really took the time to think about things like that until this year when my dad passed. That was as close to the chest. That was about as close to the chest as you can get. Losing him. And all the memories that woke up inside my brain by listening to a couple Disney songs. From not the exact album, but just another copy of that album, to hear these songs again as an adult, as a 48-year-old man pushing 49, almost 50, really woke up a lot of things in me. Sorry, folks. But anyway, there's not much more to say, and I don't want you guys watching me bawl out here on camera. I'm probably going to spend the rest of the night just watching some Star Trek on my computer. I'm kind of in the mood to watch some Deep Space Nine tonight. Maybe I'll watch some random episodes. Maybe I'll go through maybe from season 5, I think. I forget when the Klingon War started. I think it was season 5. I'm not sure. Sorry. Don't take nothing for granted, folks. Anyway, let me switch the camera view around here because I'm going to end this live stream. And again, everybody, I deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate your continued support of myself, my eBay store, this YouTube channel. You know, I really hope to end this year on a good note. I really do. And I really appreciate it. Again, I can't stress this enough, folks. You got one mother, you got one father, you got one family. You got one life. God, I remember my dad taking me to Little League. God. Geez, he wanted me to be a ball player so bad, but it just didn't work out. I even tried out for my varsity and junior varsity baseball teams and was too much of a freaking long-haired nitwit to care about baseball. I wish I would have followed through with that. It's one of the regrets. There are a lot of things that my father wanted for me that I just never followed through with. But at the end of the day, if he didn't get me into union construction, I would have never worked at that's the ID badge for the new Yankee Stadium. I actually sent one of these to my dad through the years. Hopefully my mom found it after he died. He couldn't believe like I worked at Yankee Stadium. All because of a Christmas album that we listened to as a kid. Or kids, my brother, my sister, and myself. I think my sister was still too young. Anyway, I find myself repeating everything, folks. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but thank you, everybody. God bless. Take care. Stay safe. And again, Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays, Happy Hanukkah, all that good stuff. And I'll see you all very soon. Take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And stay warm. I know it's supposed to be cold in a lot of places.